Hello and welcome to Quick Tip 99. A Gold Pass member asked me a question. Having got various trend lines on his chart, what he wanted to do is by selecting a trend line, let's just use the arrow pointer, clicking on the trend line and then being able to use the Shift-PgUp key to move the trend line up by a certain amount and the Shift page down to make it move down by a certain amount. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this program. Now there are a number of situations. For example, you can see we already have several trend lines applied to the chart. So I'm just going to press Ctrl R. What we need to be able to do, and you'll notice colors have changed. We'll look at that when we go through the program. But we need to make sure that when we first apply the program to the chart that we can access trend lines. So that's working fine. We can indeed. And what we also need to be able to do is to draw a new trend line. So I'm just going to select the drawing tools and select a trend line from, for example, there to there. If we were to use the Shift-PgUp, you'll see that we can move that particular trend line up or down. And what we could also do, if we went back to drawing, is choose the arrow pointer, choose another trend line, and then move that up or down. And you may be wondering, well, how much is it moving up or down? That's really defined as an input in the study for what I've called jump. I've set that at 5. So let's have a look at the program, which I've added quite a few comments to try and explain what we're doing. The first thing we've got is a method that processes trend lines that are already on the chart. And so what that basically does, the trend lines are already stored by TradeStation in this item here, TradeStation items, and then the category of the trend line. So what I've done is put that into a vector list underscore TL, and then what I've done is gone through all the items that are already on the chart, which are in this drawing objects that items, and I've set the color to orange. I've added a trend line click event to them, and I've changed the weight to 6. That is the first thing that we need to do, and that is run when we first apply this to the program. We run the method here, process existing. Having done that, we then go back and have a look at the next method we've got here. This is what happens when we add a drawing object to the chart. And initially, I think back in Quick Tip 19, this was whenever that was, this was not working as it was supposed to. And now it seems to work fine. But what we've got is a event, which is a drawing object being added to the chart. So we're firing that again. We're setting up that in the one statement. And what that means is that anytime a drawing object is added to the chart, then this method will be run. So we're just printing a little bit of information, which you can use if you need to, but that's just really for information. And then we're setting what I've called TL trend line. It's just a generic trend line we're going to be using throughout the program. I'm using that as the trend line that's been added, which we get from the add event args, and it's called args.added object, and it is a trend line. Then we're setting a click event to that trend line. We're changing the weight and we're changing the color to cyan. So that is every time a new event is added to, or a new trend line is added to the chart. So for example, if I add a new trend line now, let's go trend line, and I'm just going to go here again. You'll see it's added as a cyan color, and that has also got the click event attached to it. The next one is when a trend line is clicked, because we've now added the click events to all the trend lines on the chart and all the trend lines that are going to be added. And what we essentially do is store into TL the sender as type trend line, in other words, the trend line that has been clicked. We set the weight to 6 and we set the color. But the real guts of the program is this area here. Now what we're doing is a key up, and in other words, when we release a key, that is when this is fired. But we only want it to take place if, well, first of all, we need to make sure that the trend line is not null. We also need to make sure that the TL start point type is a date time point. Well, I don't know exactly why, but when there are no trend lines on the chart, it seems to indicate the trend line start point type is a BN point, which causes an error. So we're checking here that it is a date time point, both for the start point, the end point. And if it is, then we go through, we set the start date type point to the current TL start point. We set the end DT PT to the TL endpoint as DT point, and then we need to decide, are we going to add a value to it or take it away? Now, you will probably be wondering what these values are here, but when a particular key is pressed, it generates a particular number. I didn't know these numbers, but if you print the flags values in this method, you'll find out what the numbers are. And this number represents the shift, in other words, holding down shift and pressing page up. This one represents holding down shift and pressing page down. If we're holding page up, then we add jump to the price, and we set the STDTPT price to this new value, the old price plus the jump. The same for the end. And if it is the down, then what we do, we subtract from those values the jump values, and then we set the start point and the end point. And then just to look at it one more time, the one statement, we have this event when a drawing object is added. We create the TL, which we use throughout the program, and we also have a charting host, because this is where we have the event where we have the key up. And you'll see here that what I've done is initially created this using the toolbox, and then subsequently copied the code from the designer generated codes. Just to give you an example of how you might do this is if you go down here, find charting host, double click, and then with charting host selected, go to properties, and then in the events, you choose whichever property you needed. So in our case, we used on key up, double click there, and you'll see that you get a new method added. So we're not going to be using that, so I'm just going to delete that. We've already done that. Going to delete charting host. Hopefully that might be useful for you. Please, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the Markplex YouTube channel, then please subscribe. If you're also not subscribed to the email list, then be grateful if you could join that as well. So thank you.